In this lecture, we're going to cover how to register directives locally. The difference between a local and global directive is where they can be used. Other than that, there isn't anything else that sets them apart. The hooks and their arguments are the same. We're going to create a copy of the icon directive, but we're going to change things up a bit. Sometimes you may want to pass in multiple values to a directive, not just their name, but the value for them as well, allowing you to get around the limitations of modifiers and arguments. First, let's see what our directive is going to look like. Open the Home component file in your editor. We're going to replace the custom icon directive from the component in the template. The name of the new directive will be called v-icon-secondary. The v-icon-secondary directive will create an icon like the other icon directive. However, instead of passing in a string, we'll pass in an object. The object will have two properties called icon and right. We'll set the icon property to headphones alt. The right property will be set to true. Passing in an object is an alternative method to using arguments or modifiers. It's more flexible because you can pass in more complex values to the directive. We're going to exclude the color modifier and full argument to save some time. After this lecture is over, you are more than free to add those two features back to our directive. For now, these two properties will suffice. The directive currently doesn't exist. We'll need to create it next. In the Directives directory, create a file called iconsecondary.js. We have the option of defining the directive in the component file instead of an external file. We're going to write the code in a separate file to keep things organized. It doesn't hurt to do so. In the file, we're going to export a default object. Next, go over to the icon directive file. Copy the binding function over to the directive file we just created. The code is going to be similar. Because we're not going to support a color change or overriding the entire class, we're going to remove both conditional statements from the function. We're also going to add the text green 400 class back to the element. The binding.value property can be treated as an object instead of a string. Update the value of icon class variable to access the icon property. That's where we defined it. Then, update the conditional statement to check if the binding.value.write property is true. That's it. We've updated the directive to use object syntax instead of using modifiers and arguments. You may want to take the extra steps to verify the data types to prevent anything unexpected from happening. The very last step is to register the directive. Back in the Home component file, scroll to the script block. We'll import the file with the name icon-secondary. Directives can be registered locally by adding the directives property to the component. We'll add it below the components property. The value for this will be an object. In the object, the property name will be used as the directive name. The value of the property will be the configuration object for the directive. We're going to call the directive icon secondary. Its value will be the icon secondary object we imported. As I said before, we could have defined the directive inside the component, but I believe outsourcing the code to a different file will make this neater and organized. Let's view the directive in action in the browser. The icon will continue to be placed to the right. We have two directives that do the same thing but with different logic. One uses arguments and modifiers. The other uses object syntax in the value to provide it with information on how the icon should appear. Neither is wrong. It entirely depends on how you want to structure your directives.